Hi, I'm Troy, at TroyLol1 on Twitter. I won Best of Lee Sin in Atlanta Regional Qualifier, and I'm here to showcase my deck. So this past weekend, I played Lee Sin. The deck is performed very well in Atlanta, and it's more of a tempo-oriented deck, less so than a mid-range deck. I was 3-0 against Draven, and I was also 2-1 against Irelia. Yeah, so overall, I think the deck performed really well, and I would probably only make 1 or 2 card changes in the sideboard. Getting into the deck, Lee Sin Legend, pay 1 to buff. This legend ability is better than people give it credit for. One might is not something to scoff at. One might can be the difference between winning a combat and not winning a combat. It can also curve out our turn 1 going second, essentially making all of our 2 drops into 3 drops, which is a huge deal when your opponent plays a 2 might unit on turn 1. They really can't go to a battlefield on their turn 2 without holding up runes or using resources to protect it. And if they don't, and just decide to develop in base, we can punish them by generating points with our Lucian or first mate. And then we can also punish them from tapping out and developing by using our key removal spells like Charm and Challenge. For our chosen champion, it's Lee Sin centered. The +2 might for your other friendly units matters a lot when pushing into battlefields or even holding one. It can also be used as a 6-drop that doesn't cost the power, which can be huge if you just need a big guy to develop. We can also pump him up to 7 might after playing him, which plays around key removal spells like Singularity and Falling Star. For the most part, Lee Sin Center is usually used as a closer to just accelerate out to a battlefield and break a big hold on the final turn. As for our rune split, we're running 6 body runes and 6 calm runes. We could have probably gone both ways with the split, probably running 7 body runes and 5 calm runes, but our team decided that 6 and 6 would be fine because there's some times in the early game where we would need the green to utilize our charms or defies to protect one of our units. But overall, I was very happy with the split. Going into the battlefields, our game 1 of choice is Monastery of Harana. Very good with our Lee Sin Legend. We're basically paying only 1 energy to draw. It helps us draw into our key units. Definitely our best battlefield, and it's why we play game 1. And also rarely helps our opponent, as there aren't many decks in the format that can utilize it. For our going first battlefield, we have Zon Warrens. Such a powerful battlefield. The reason why we play game 1 is because we are not taking any of our 2 drops out going first because we want a turn 1 play. So in order to filter our dead draws, we're running Zon so we can discard those 2 drops that aren't going to help us in that mid to late game. Lastly, we run Sunken Temple going second. There's definitely an argument that we could be running this as our going first battlefield, but because we run Zon Warrens going first, my team decided that this was probably the best choice for going second. Sunken is good for the same reason that Monastery is good. We're paying 1 for a draw. However, the requirement is much more difficult for our deck, and it also benefits our opponent much more than Monastery would. We usually won't get a draw from it until in later turns, just because of the requirement being so hard. The earliest we can get a draw from it is if we use a pump spell to get over a unit at that battlefield, or using our Irelia Fervent when it comes untapped. It's 5 might, so we can get a draw on turn 3. Getting into our main deck, for our 2 drops, we are running 3 Lonely Poro. This is just such a solid 2-drop, probably one of the best 2-drops in the game. It just draws us a card for the most part. If we just leave it at a battlefield, our opponent has to deal with it and just replaces itself. 3 Stalwart Poros. I think this is our best turn 1 play going first, as it's the most amount of might we can get on turn 1. If we choose to bring it to a battlefield, we're able to buff it and able to charm any 3 might unit that they play on turn 1. This includes key units like Lucian or Purple Azurill. It often doesn't happen, but it's definitely relevant, and generally we can pretty much win the game on the spot if we're able to do that. It also, when it's buffed, it can't be accelerated into by a Kaisa Survivor because it would threaten a trade, and it also is +1 might when a Watcher moves in. So it goes to 1 might and then gets the shield after the Watcher moves in, which can be relevant as you can threaten a punch first to trade. As for our last 2 drops, we're running 1 of Clockwork Keeper and 1 of Desert Call. Desert Call is just a great card that can be very flexible later in the game. You can really go both ways with any of these 2 drops. Desert Call is much better in the early to mid game, and Clockwork Keeper is much better in the late game when we can actually pay the power to draw. Rarely am I using Clockwork Keeper as I'm casting this card to get a draw in the mid game because the power cost is just too taxing. Desert Call is also a very strong card against yellow decks because it allows us to play around like Cold of the Week, just having multiple units in the back to protect our big units. So overall, very happy with these last 2 flex 2 drops in this spot. Going into our stars of the show, our key units, we're running 3 First Mates. First Mate is just a crazy card. Rarely do I want to play this card as a 3 drop or just a 3 my body. The utility it brings, it can't be underestimated. This card just wins games. You can protect your units or have your key units gank battlefields. It also can accelerate any unit to score later on in the game. I won my round 7 winning into day 2. I was able to double conquer on the last turn by playing a unit from my hand and then playing First Mate to ready that unit and get to the last score. We're also running 3 Lucian Merciless. This is probably the best 3 drop in the game. This card just allows us to generate free points like every turn without committing to a battlefield. If I could run this as my chosen champion, I would. This card is just like so much better in these color combinations because we have the tools to protect it. Yep. 3 Irelia Fervents. This is our queen in our deck. It allows us to do very unfair things. With our Lucian Legend, this untapping becomes a 7 might unit. This matters a lot as we can get over almost anything at a battlefield, including the best card in the format, which is Fair's Forerunner. So we can cleanly, efficiently kill a Fair's Forerunner without even expending a card. Her ability also synergizes very well with the rest of our deck, making our disciplines 3 might, our Doran's Blade 3 might, and even the +1 from Challenge at First Mate is a big deal. Getting into the gear, we are running 3 Zonias. Some of you guys might be wondering why we decided to go with Zonias instead of GA. Guardian Angel costs the power to equip and Zonias does not. So that's the biggest reason that we aren't running it. It also has the extra utility to hide a card, which essentially becomes a GA for whatever unit that we have at a battlefield. We're running 2 Doran's Blades. This gear is like a very impressive card in the deck, performed very well at the tournament. Definitely not the best turn 1 play, but we can play it if we have to. The significant reason why we play it is because it's synergy with Irelia Fervent. It also synergizes well with our Lucian ability, so we can weapon master it, so we avoid the equip cost. It also synergizes with our Sunken Temple, giving our units mighty so we can get the draw from Sunken. Getting into the spells, we are running 3 charms and three challenges. This is what makes our deck work so well and consistently. Having access to essentially 6 base removal spells is very big for our deck. It also has some extra utility. Challenge, having the action keyword definitely matters, where we can use challenge during showdowns, giving our Irelia +1 or sniping a unit. It punishes decks that tap out on their turn to just develop in base. 3 punch first, pretty self-explanatory card. 1 energy, 2 power just for a +5. It's even more insane with our Irelia Fervent, which gets +6. We run 3 because we want to see this card like every game. It also allows us to recycle it away if we see it in our mulligan. 3 discipline, not much to explain here, just played in like every green deck. It replaces itself, becomes 3 might with our Irelia Fervent. Generally, I'm trying to keep this card in my opening hand with like an early unit, just so I have access to a pump to get over whatever they play at a battlefield. 3 Defy, also another green essential, just a crazy card that counters many spells in the metagame. Very much needed when into other green decks. We run 3 because this card is just that good and needed for almost every matchup. It's actually not that great into the iteration of Draven that was being played in Atlanta. Draven was probably the only matchup that I was cutting Defies post-board. 2 not so fast for our last 2 cards in our deck. Another green essential. This is much needed in this metagame as many purple decks are running multiple rebukes, whether it be 3 rebukes and a beast below. Rebuke is so good in this meta because Fair's Forerunner and Irelia Fervent, so we just run these not so fast so we can protect from rebuke. If I had to make one change about this deck over the weekend, I would probably add another one of these in the sideboard. This card is very much needed in the control matchups. In my round 13 to win the best of, I played against an Irelia, and one of the key exchanges in our game 3 was when he pushed into my battlefield and used Defiant Dance, and I used my Not So Fast first, and then he went Defy to counter the Not So Fast, and then I countered his Defy with Defy. So I was able to win that exchange and then ultimately win the game and win the best of Lucian. As for our sideboard, we run 2 Sabotage. Sabotage is just a crazy orange card that probably should be played in almost every orange deck. The reason why we don't run this in the main deck is it's hard to fit 8 2-drops in all the key cards that we're running, so we elect to keep it in the sideboard. Overall, very good card, very flexible card, but I was only really bringing it into control matchups or when I was cutting some 2-drops on the draw. 2 Unyielding Spirits. For our control matchups that run a high amount of damage-based spells, it's just a very good card. Generally, the control matchups that we're playing into, they're playing around Not So Fast, which is 2 energy. And if we're tapping ourselves out to just 1 energy, sometimes this can surprise our opponent and just completely just win the game on the spot. For our next card, we're running 1 Thwonk. Just a very good card that really overperformed this weekend, won me so many matches. It's just a very good closer. You kind of only want to see one of these at the very end of the game. Just won me many games as it just allowed me to close games with a big hold. 2 Disarming Rakes. This card is a very efficient gear removal card that creates a body, which is very significant, especially because we can buff this unit and get it even bigger with our Lee Sin. We're bringing it in majority for our Irelia matchups so we can snipe their key gear like Boots of Swiftness, GA, and Zonia's. And it's very cheap, so we're able to play other cards in the same turn that we're casting this card. For our last card, we're running 1 of Akshan. Just another gear hate that allows us to steal like key equipment such as GA or Boots of Swiftness or BF Sword. It can even just win you games on the spot by stealing like an Aurora or a Vanguard Armory. So it's definitely worth having a slot for. And even in matchups where I wasn't trying to steal gear, it can still be just a 4/4 vanilla 4-drop that we can play on our turn 2, and it can just replace like a 2-drop when we're just on the draw. And also just synergizes with our D-Blade. That comes up sometimes. Yeah, so overall, I think the deck really performed well this weekend, and I'm really happy with the deck as a whole. The next regional qualifier that I'll be attending is Hartford. I'm going to be representing Lee Sin most likely. I think people really underestimate this Lee Sin deck. I think it's very solid. I think the core of the deck is still going to be probably the same in set 3 with a few additions, and I'm going to show why it's a strong deck. Shout out to my testing team, including Dat, Travis, Andrew, Jared, and Nate. They really helped me test this Lee Sin deck and helped me improve as a player and really refine the deck. Special shout out to Jay Young, or Jared, my best friend that introduced me to Riftbound. Special shout out to Judge Dredge, Nate, who helped me work on the deck. Lastly, shout out to the Columbus Riftbound community for making my Riftbound experience so great. Once again, I'm Troy. This is the Best of Lee Sin in Atlanta deck profile. I'll see you guys in Hartford.